Day. Very good morning, my dear students. Welcome to 10th Standard Science online class. My dear children, in the previous class, we have discussed about how the nutrition will be takes place in amoeba and how the photosynthesis and role of carbon dioxide and chlorophyll in the process of photosynthesis. These are all the concepts that we have discussed in a previous class. I hope you understand these are all the concepts. So if you have any doubts regarding this, so must and should again watch this video again and whatever I sent in a previously and then understand the concept. So after that also if you have any doubts regarding that concept, please make a phone call. I'm ready to clarify all your doubts. So dear children, in the previously we learnt about the nutrition in amoeba. So in the amoeba, how the nutrition will be takes place. So there is a special modified cell that is we call it as pseudopodia that will be helps for the absorption of food materials. And when it is food is entered into the amoeba body, there is a food vacuole is created inside the body of the amoeba. Then in the food vacuole that has been digested, the food whatever it is entered that is digested and dissolve the digested food in the cytoplasm of the amoeba. And then whatever the undigested food is there in amoeba body, that also elimination also will be takes place by the help of rupturing of cells body in any part of their entire system. So in that ruptured part, that elimination out of which means undigested food that will be comes out from the body. These are the concepts that we discussed in the previous class, children. So in this class also, we are going to discuss about more information regarding the life processes. Yes, children. So in this class, we are going to discuss about the nutrition in human beings. So how the digestion or nutrition will be takes place in human beings? How the nutrition will be takes place in human beings? See, listen now. There is a special system will be there in our body. This system we call it as digestive system. This digestive system will be very helpful for the process of nutrition. Will be get the nutrition. Dear children, the nutrition in human beings takes place in the digestive system in our body. It will be consisting of alimentary canal, glands, which produce enzymes and which breaks down the food into smaller particles or small molecules. So particularly, the main organs of the digestive system are mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and anus. So the main organs of digestive systems are mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and last one is anus. And apart from that, there is some glands will becomes under the human digestive system in the alimentary canal of human body. These glands are salivary glands, gastric glands, liver, pancreas, and intestinal glands. These are all the major components of human digestive system. So which are the main components of human digestive system, children? Mouth, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and anus. These are all the major digestive organs that is actively involved in the process of digestion. Apart from that, some of the glands also will be play a major role in the process of nutrition of human body and digestion of human body. So these are all salivary glands, gastric glands, liver, pancreas, and intestinal glands. So these are also some glands that will be actively involved in the process of digestion. See, children, so now let us discuss one by one. So what is the role of mouth and what is the main function of esophagus and stomach and how the stomach will be very helpful, actively involved in the process of digestion, and how the small intestine will be helps in the process of digestion, And what are the glands that we are discussed? Salivary glands, gastric glands, liver, pancreas. These are all the concepts that we are going to discuss systematically. See children, some of the mouth. The first digestive system part is mouth. In the mouth, the food is whatever we will be consume the food. First, what we have to do when the food is entered to in our mouth, we are starting chewing. Right now, we have to start chewing the food. So that chewing will be very helpful to break down the hard food particles into smaller food particles by the help of teeth. Apart from the breakdown of food particles in the mouth, there is a gland that is present in the mouth that is called as salivary glands. The glands that is present in the mouth, we call it as salivary glands. Do you know where it is located? Dear children, these salivary glands is present or located in a jaws. ದವಡೆಗಳ ಒಂದು ರೀಸನ್ನಲ್ಲಿ the salivary glands that we will be identified. So these salivary glands secretes the enzyme, we call it as salivary amylase. Name the salivary gland that will be secretes an enzyme, that is what we call it as salivary amylase. See children, this salivary amylase is a kind of an enzyme that will be play a major role to convert the starch into sugar. That will be play a major role in conversion of starch into sugar. Then, after the proper breakdown of food particles in the mouth by the help of the teeth, that is nothing but when we are going to start the chewing by the help of the teeth, the food particles become chewing and will be breakdowns from hard food particle into smaller food particles by the help of the teeth. So after that, apart from that breakdown of the hard food particle and conversion of the smaller particles, there is an enzyme that is secreted by the gland, we call it as salivary glands. This will be secretes an enzyme that is called as salivary amylase. So when we are going to chew the food, so the tongue will be very helpful to rotate the food. Proper mixing of the food will be takes place along with salivary amylase enzyme. So this salivary amylase enzyme converts the starch into sugar. Then after the proper mixing of the food is entered to stomach by the help of food pipe, or the food pipe is also called as esophagus. The food passes through from the mouth to stomach by the help of food pipe. This food pipe is also called as esophagus. So now I hope you understand the role of mouth in the process of digestive system. So next, now we are move on to the next step of the digestive system, so that is stomach. See children, so when the food is entered in our body, in the stomach, so previously some glands that we are discussed, gastric glands, salivary amylase glands, salivary glands, gastric glands, pancreatic glands, these are all the concepts, liver, gallbladder. These will be the glands that will be helps to secrete some digestive enzymes. Let us discuss now in a systematically. So already we know that the role of mouth, right? No, after the proper mixing, the food is now entered into the stomach. Here in the stomach, there is a glands is attached to the stomach, so we call it as gastric glands. This gastric glands produces a juice, we call it as gastric juice, which contains an enzyme, call it as pepsin. So the gastric glands produces the gastric juice which contains an enzyme, what we call it as pepsin. See this, apart not only the gastric gland, in the stomach there is an acid that is secreted, that is hydrochloric acid and mucus. These the different kinds of materials or components that is secreted in the stomach. So gastric gland produces the gastric juice. This gastric juice will be consisting of an enzyme called it as pepsin. And apart from the gastric gland, in the stomach also it will be secreted some components that is be named as hydrochloric acid and mucus. So what is the role of the pepsin and hydrochloric acid and mucus? See children, that we have to know very clearly. Listen carefully. So pepsin breaks down the proteins. Whatever the proteins present in the food, that breakdown will be takes place by the help of pepsin. Then, if you want the food become acidic, proper digestion, the food become should has to become acidic medium. ಸೊ ಡೈಜೆಷನ್ ಆಗಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಫುಡ್ ಏನು ನಾವು ಕನ್ಸ್ಯೂಮ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ ದಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಟು ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟ್ ಅನ್ ಅಸಿಡಿಕ್ ಮೀಡಿಯಮ್. ಸೊ ವಿತಿನ್ ದಟ್ ಅಸಿಡಿಕ್ ಮೀಡಿಯಮ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ದಿಸ್ ಬ್ರೇಕ್ ಡೌನ್ ಆಫ್ ಪ್ರೋಟೀನ್ಸ್, ಫ್ಯಾಟ್ಸ್, ಲಿಪಿಡ್ಸ್, these are all the components will be takes place. So that's why in the stomach the hydrochloric acid that is secreted in our stomach to create an acidic medium. Dear children, one more thing we have to learn. So if the stomach is secreted hydrochloric acid, it is in a concentrated means it will be starts burning, right? No, then how our stomach becomes safe, secured by the safe, which means by the help of the whatever that is hydrochloric acid is secreted. See, there is one more enzyme that is secreted in the stomach, that is we call it as mucus. mucus, mucus. This mucus protects the wall of the stomach and it will be act as a guard. Just like in your mobile, we are going to keep adaptive. There is some screen guards on the screen to prevent the damage to the screen, right? No, just like that only children, this mucus enzyme will be create a wall to the interior wall to the stomach, and this mucus enzyme helps to prevent the action of acid in the stomach. So that's why the food that stomach is escaped from the hydrochloric acid activities. And then after proper mixing of gastric juice, pepsin, hydrochloric acid and mucus enzyme, so then after the proper mixing, again the food is passes into the small intestine. So in the small intestine, the process of actual digestion will be takes place in a small intestine only, children. See here, when the food is entered into the small intestine, the bile juice is secreted from the liver, pancreatic juice that is secreted from the pancreas. So then bile breaks down the fat into smaller globules. So pancreatic juice contains an enzyme called it as trypsin and lipase. These enzymes will be very helpful to break down the proteins, further breakdowning of proteins and as well as fats. And after that, in the glands of the there is in a glands, the walls of the small intestine produces intestinal juice also. This enzymes proper mixing, that is pancreatic juice, bile juice, then small intestinal juice, this will be converts the all the proteins, fats and carbohydrates into glucose, fat into fatty acids and glycerols into proteins into amino acids. So after the conversion, what will be happen? So the walls of the small intestine have a several finger-like projections, that is we call it as villi. These villi are interlinked to the blood vessels. It helps to increase the surface area of absorption of digested food. So these villi will be play a major role in the absorption of food particles. So after the absorption, so what will be happen? So whatever the villi that is linked to the blood vessels, right now children, from the help of the blood vessels, and it will be directly reaches to the circulatory system, which means the human heart, and the heart will be pumps all the digested food to all each and every part of our body. So after the transportation and after the absorption of the food, the undigested food that will be transported to the followed to the large intestine. In the large intestine, water and other skipped nitro waste material, other skipped proteins and lipids, whatever that is skipped in the small intestine, that reabsorption will be takes place in a large intestine. Water and remaining proteins, lipids, whatever it will be skipped in the small intestine, that reabsorption will be held in the large intestine. After the reabsorption, so whatever the undigested food materials will be there, that will be comes out from the body by the help of anus, or this anus is also called as rectum. Dear children, this is the complete information of how the process of digestive system that is actively involved in our body. Hope you understand, children. So next, before going to know the respiration, I will share one video related to digestive system. Must be watch it and understand the concept.
Digestion in human beings. Human beings take food through mouth and digest it in specific organs for digestion. The undigested food is defecated. The food we take passes through a specific canal which begins with buccal cavity and ends at the anus. This canal is called alimentary canal or the digestive tract. The parts of the alimentary canal are buccal cavity, esophagus, stomach, large intestine, small intestine, rectum, and anus. The food gets digested gradually as it passes through the various parts of the tract. Digestive juices secreted by the salivary glands, liver, and pancreas also aid digestion. Mouth and the buccal cavity. Food intake in human beings is through mouth. This process of taking food is called ingestion. Chewing food is very necessary for proper digestion as digestion process starts in the mouth itself. What happens during chewing? The large pieces of food we eat are mechanically broken down into small pieces. Teeth helps us in doing so. Action of saliva on food. During chewing, food mixes with saliva. Saliva is secreted from salivary glands located on the lower jaw between the tongue and teeth. Saliva converts starch in the food into sugars and also softens the food. Tongue. Taste of food can be detected by the taste buds present on the tongue. Tongue is a fleshy muscular organ attached to the floor of the buccal cavity. It is free at the front and moves in all directions. Taste buds appear as small bumps on the tongue and have different regions which help us enjoy different tastes. Esophagus or food pipe. The swallowed food from the mouth passes onto the esophagus. The epiglottis, which is a flap like structure behind the tongue, directs the food into the esophagus and prevents entry into the larynx. The peristaltic movements of the esophagus helps the food to move down the tract till it reaches the stomach. Stomach. Stomach is a bag-like structure with thick wall. It is in the shape of a flattened U and is the widest part in the alimentary canal. The food that enters the stomach is churned and mixes with the mucus, hydrochloric acid, and digestive juices secreted by the inner lining of the stomach. The acid helps to kill the bacteria present in the food. It also makes the medium in the stomach acidic. The digestive juices secreted by the stomach break down proteins into simpler substances. Then the food is emptied into small intestine. Small intestine. Small intestine is a highly coiled structure and is about 7.5 meters long. As soon as the small intestine receives food from the stomach, the digestive juices from liver and pancreas are mixed into it. Liver. Liver is the largest gland in the human body and is situated in the upper side of the abdomen. To the right, it is reddish brown in color. It secretes bile, which breaks down fats. Bile is stored in gallbladder between meals. Pancreas. Pancreas is a leaf shaped and cream colored gland located just below the stomach. It secretes pancreatic juice, which acts and breaks down carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. After this is completed, the partially digested food reaches the lower part of the small intestine, where intestinal juices act upon the food and completes digestion of any remaining components in food. The carbohydrates in the food break down into sugars like glucose, fats into fatty acids, and glycerol, and proteins into amino acids. The food consumed is digested and is now ready to be absorbed into the blood. Absorption of food in the small intestine. The inner wall of the small intestine has finger like projections called villi, which have a network of thin blood vessels close to the surface. The villus increases the surface area of absorption and absorbs the digested food materials. The substances thus absorbed are transported through the bloodstream to different organs in the body and are used to build complex substances like proteins. This process is called assimilation. In the cells, glucose breaks down into carbon dioxide and water with the help of oxygen and releases energy. The undigested and unabsorbed food enters the large intestine. Large intestine. The large intestine is wider than small intestine and measures 1.5 meters in length. Once the undigested food enters the large intestine, it absorbs water and some salts from it and passes the remaining waste into the rectum. Here it remains as semi solid fecus. The fecal matter is removed through the anus. This is
Yes, children. Now, one more very important major life process activity that will be takes place in each and every living organism that we are going to discuss now. That is, we call it as respiration. So, respiration means it is a process by which the food is burnt in the cells of the body with the help of oxygen, which means in the presence of oxygen, and release the energy. This will be call it as respiration. See children, whatever we are consuming the food that is digested in our alimentary canal in the digestive system. But but here one thing you should remember, whatever the digested food that is digested by the help of the digestive system of our body, that is each and every cell that will be get by the help of the transportation. So how the transportation will be takes place, this is the concept that we will be discussed later. So after the transportation, what we will be get, the food will be reaches to each and every part of the cell. But is that food doesn't provide energy directly. Again, whatever the food is entered into the cell, so in the cell or each and every within the cell of each and every cells whatever present in our body, so in that various metabolic activities that will be takes place. That is, we call it as breakdown of food by the help of oxygen. See children, so if you want to get the energy, so our body, within the body, there is a metabolic activity that will be takes place. So if you want to do the respiration, which means our body gets the energy, so our body, in the body, the breakdown of food particles will be takes place, right? No. So how does this food particles breakdown will be takes place? So because of the breakdown of these food particles will be takes place by the help of oxygen only. So for that purpose only, our body requires oxygen. So why our body requires oxygen? To break down the food particles and produce the energy. So to release the energy, so in the body, the breakdown of the food particles will be takes place. So because of that reason only, our body requires oxygen. So most probably in human beings, it will be takes place in mitochondria of the cell. It will be takes place in the mitochondria of the cell. So that's why only this mitochondria is also called as powerhouse of the cell. So how the breakdown will be takes place, these are the concepts that we are learnt in last class when you are in the ninth standard. So how the energy is released? See children, after the breakdown of the food particles in the mitochondria of the cell, the energy released during the respiration that is used to make ATP molecules. So breakdown of the food that will be releases in the form of energy that is in the form of ATP. ATP will be stands for adenosine triphosphate. What is the full form of ATP molecules? ATP molecules is nothing but adenosine triphosphate. So hope you understand children. So from next one is after that ATP molecules it will be converted into ADP molecules. So that is ADP means adenosine diphosphate. Okay, so ADP plus phosphate gives energy. So by the help of the ATP molecules. So energy is stored in the cells in the form of ATP molecules. When the cells need energy, so whatever the energy is released at the time of breakdown of food particles, that is in the form of adenosine triphosphate, which means ATP. So after that, if any cell of our body requires energy or needs energy means, so this whatever the stored ATP adenosine triphosphate that is break down in the presence of water to form adenosine diphosphate ADP and energy. So this energy will be released. So like this the process of respiration that will be held in each and every living organism. See children, so here we will be identify there are the two types of the respirations. So in the nutrition we are discussed different varieties of nutritions like right now. So for example holozoic, saprophytic. So these are all the concepts we are learned. Same like that only. So in the respiration also we will be identify two types. So that is aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. What do you mean by aerobic respiration? The process of respiration that will be takes place in the presence of oxygen, that we can say that aerobic respiration. So here this aerobic respiration will be produces more energy, and then as a result of the aerobic respiration the products that we are getting by the breakdown of the glucose as a result of that we will get carbon dioxide, water and energy. This released carbon dioxide only eliminated through our body in the form of respiration and exhalation process. So this aerobic respiration that will be held in most of all organisms. Understand now children, so then in aerobic respiration the glucose is converted into pyruvate in the cytoplasm in the presence of oxygen, and then the presence of oxygen again that pyruvate is converted into carbon dioxide, water and energy in the mitochondria. In the mitochondria that will be the breakdown of the pyruvate will be takes place and releases the energy, water and carbon dioxide. So related to this also, I will link one more video related to types of respiration. Just watch it. So next one, so the type of the respiration that is called as anaerobic respiration. What do you mean by anaerobic respiration? So aerobic respiration means nothing but the respiration that will be takes place by the help of oxygen, right? No. Then what about anaerobic respiration? So anaerobic respiration is nothing but it will be takes place in the absence of oxygen. Anaerobic respiration is nothing but the process of respiration that will be takes place by the help of which means by the absence of oxygen. So as a result of the anaerobic respiration, it produces less energy as compared to the aerobic respiration. In the aerobic respiration, we will be identify more amount of energy. So then the end products that we will be get in an aerobic respiration is carbon dioxide, water and energy. But here in the anaerobic respiration, the end products that we will be get, we call it as lactic acid or ethanol and carbon dioxide and energy. And this will be takes place in even the muscle cells yeast also. See children, one more thing. Have you observed when we are going to do that more amount of, we will be played so much of time playing games or unfortunately, so suddenly our muscles become as a pains unfortunately and suddenly because of heavy exercises. Do you know why this pain will be takes place? Yes, children, because of the anaerobic respiration will be held in the muscles in some cases. So because of that only our muscle cells doesn't get the sufficient amount of oxygen, and when we are doing any more amount of physical activities at the time our muscle cells doesn't get the sufficient amount of oxygen. So as a result of that, the process of anaerobic respiration that will be takes place in the muscles also. As a result of that, so we call it as cramping of muscles. So that is technically we call it as cramping of muscles. This will be takes place in the muscles. So that cramping of muscles because of less secretion of supply of oxygen in our body. So here in the muscle cells, the glucose is converted into pyruvate in the absence of oxygen. Again, the pyruvate is converted into lactic acid and energy. So because of accumulation of lactic acid in the muscles, just we will be feel pain in the muscles because of accumulation of lactic acid. Then in the absence of oxygen, that anaerobic respiration is also takes place in yeast cells also. So here the glucose is converted into pyruvate in the absence of oxygen. Pyruvate is converted into ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy. This process we call it as fermentation. So in that also that absence of oxygen, the breakdown of glucose will be takes place in the yeast cell. So it is a very important children must be understand this concept. So there are the two types of the respirations, aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. So aerobic respiration nothing but the respiration that will be takes place in the presence of oxygen. So what is the products that we will be get in the aerobic respiration? Energy, carbon dioxide and water, and we will be get more energy as compared to the anaerobic respiration. So in the process of aerobic respiration, the glucose converts into pyruvate. That pyruvate will be breakdowns in the presence of oxygen. It will be releases energy, carbon dioxide and water. Most probably this phenomenon that will be takes place in mitochondria of each and every cell of our body. So then the anaerobic respiration that will be takes place in the absence of oxygen, it will be produces less energy. as compared to the aerobic respiration. So as a result of what are the end products that we will be get in anaerobic respiration? Lactic acid or ethanol and carbon dioxide and as well as energy. So even this anaerobic respiration, let us discuss a few examples related to anaerobic respiration. It will be takes place in muscle cells and as well as yeast. So cramping of muscles that will be takes place because of heavy exercises. As a result of that, our muscle cells doesn't get the sufficient amount of oxygen. If the muscle cells doesn't get the sufficient amount of oxygen, what will be happen? So that process of anaerobic respiration will be takes place. As a result of that, the glucose will be breakdowns. In the absence of oxygen, it will be produces the lactic acid plus energy. Dear children, because of accumulation of lactic acid only, the cramping of muscles will be takes place. So paining in the muscles will be takes place because of lactic acid. Then in anaerobic respiration that will be also takes place in the least yeast cells also. So that here in the yeast cells the glucose is converted or breakdown into pyruvate. The pyruvate is again breakdowns in the absence of oxygen. It will be converts into ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy. This ethanol and carbon dioxide and energy. The ethanol and carbon dioxide are toxic substances and energy is whatever that is released by the help of glucose. So this is about the complete information regarding the breakdown of different pathway of glucose. Hope you understand children. So there are the two types of the respiration, that is aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. And then there how the process of aerobic respiration will be takes place in mitochondria and how the anaerobic respiration will be takes place in muscle cells and cramping of muscles because of the accumulation of lactic acid and then how the breakdown of glucose will be takes place in yeast cell. These are the concepts that we are discussed now. So I hope you understand this concept. Dear children, next we are move on to the next concept, that is respiration in human beings. So how the respiration will be takes place in human beings? What are the systems or cell organelles that is actively involved in the process of respiration? See children, the main organs of the respiratory systems are nostril, nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, lungs and diaphragm. So these are all the cell organelles that will be actively involved in the process of respiration in human beings. So what is the role of these nostrils, nasal cavity and where these are all located and where the pharynx will be located and what is the main reason function of this pharynx and larynx? So these are the concepts now we are going to discuss children. See, air enter through the nostrils. Whatever we will be inhale the air by the help of the nose. So that is we call it as nostrils. In the nostrils, there is some components of hairs and mucus will be present. This hairs and mucus helps to trap the microorganisms and as well as dust particles. It then passes through pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi and finally enters into the lungs. See children, this trachea having the rings of cartilage which prevents it from collapsing when there is no air in the trachea, which means, so just observe it in the trachea. So you are going to observe there is a ring like structures that you are observing in this picture. Right now children, so you are going to observe there is a ring like structures that you are going to observe. Just observe it. Once again I am showing now. So just it will be looks like this. There is arrangement of rings that will be takes place in the trachea. See children, this trachea will be very helpful to avoid the collapsing, which means compression of lungs and as well as windpipe when the air is absent in the trachea because of this ring formation. So the bronchi divides into smaller tubes called as branchioles, which ends the tiny air, which means that airs whatever it will be there. So in the picture that you are observing, just observe it carefully. So this is the bronchi. So this branches divides into small tubes. That is whatever you are observing the greeny particles. It is a branching. It will be looks like it will be dividing the different branches, right? No. So that branches again that is ends with that there is a bags, that bags what we call it as alveoli or air bags. So this alveoli is supplied with it is linked with the blood vessels. With that only the process of exchange of gases will be held. So this alveoli is has a elastic in nature. It will be helps to increase its size when we inhale the air, and at the time this alveoli will be absorb more amount of oxygen, and this will be supplied to each and every part of our body by the help of blood vessels. Then after that again the carbon dioxide is also will be entering in, which means exchange of carbon dioxide also will be takes place by the help of alveoli only, by the process we call it as diffusion. So this alveoli helps to increase the surface area of exchange of gases. So nostril will be play a major role. By the help of the nostril, the air is entered. So that nostril will be followed by the hairy like substances and mucus. This hairy like substances and mucus traps the dust particles and microorganisms, and this doesn't allow the microorganisms and the dust particles to the lungs. So after that the air, by the help of the windpipe, the air is entered through pharynx, larynx, and then trachea. Pharynx and larynx, so these are all the major two cell organelles that is present in the process of respiration. Pharynx and larynx will be play a major role for the transmission of food particles into our body, and as well as larynx will be very helpful for the process of voice box. So trachea, that is there is a ring-like structures that we are going to observe in the trachea. This trachea, because of that ring-like structure only, the collapsion that doesn't takes place. The compression does not which means compression doesn't takes place in the trachea when the air is absent. Then the bronchi divides into smaller tubes called as branchioles. So this will be ends with the air sacs, that is we call it as alveoli. So in the alveoli what we call it as, it is an air bags. It is an elastic in nature. This alveoli is linked to blood vessels. This blood vessels will be helps to supply the oxygen and as well as carbon dioxide exchange that will be held in the alveoli only. So when we inhale the air, the alveoli will be increases its size just like a balloon. Then the alveoli helps to increase the surface area of the gases, exchange of gases. Then the process of oxygen will be directly dissolved in the blood, and even same like that only the carbon dioxide also dissolving will be exchange will be takes place in the alveoli by the process of diffusion. Dear children, this is the complete information about how does the process of respiration that will be held in human beings. So must be watch attached a video related to respiration also.
Human respiratory system. Human respiratory system consists of a pair of lungs and air passages extending between the nostrils and the Lungs. Lungs are situated in the thoracic cavity on either side of the heart. Respiratory system starts from nostrils. The nostrils lead into a pair of nasal cavities. The hairs inside the nasal cavity filter out dust from the air. The nasal cavity leads into the pharynx. It is a common passage for both air and food. The floor of the pharynx has a slit-like opening called glottis. This is guarded by a lid called epiglottis. The glottis leads into the voice box or larynx. Across the cavities of voice box, a pair of fibrous cords called vocal cords are present. Its vibration produces sounds. Larynx lead to the trachea. It is 10 to 14 centimeters in length. Trachea is supported by incomplete cartilage rings. The lower end of trachea divides into two branches called bronchus. Each bronchus enters into lungs and again divides into smaller branches called bronchioles. Each bronchiole enters into a bubble-like expansion called alveoli. Alveoli are richly supplied with blood vessels. Alveoli are units of lung where the exchange of gases takes place. Lungs in the respiratory system provides vast surface for gas exchange. Lungs are conical in shape with its broad end resting on the diaphragm. Each lung is covered by a double-layered membrane called pleura. The cavity between the two layers is filled with the pleural fluid. It helps to reduce the friction between the lungs and the chest wall. Each lung is made up of millions of alveoli.
Yes, children. Now let us move on to the next very important concept that is related to the life process activity, that is we call it as transportation. So generally the transportation in human beings. So majorly the main transportation system in human beings is circulatory system. It consisting of blood, arteries, veins, capillaries and heart. These are all the major components of human transportation or circulatory system in our body. The first one is blood. Dear children, this blood will be very helpful to transport the food, oxygen and waste products. It consisting of plasma, red blood cells, white blood cells and as well as platelets. Dear children, what is the major role of plasma? Plasma helps to transport the food particles, water, carbon dioxide and other nitrogenous waste substances that is released in the cell. Then red blood cells. So these red blood cells very helpful to transport the oxygen. Why? Because these red blood cells will be consisting of a pigment that is called as hemoglobin. So this hemoglobin is a pigment that will be play a major role in the process of transportation of oxygen. So this hemoglobin pigment that is present in red blood cells, that is we call it as RBC. That is full form of RBC is red blood cells. These red blood cells will be helps to transport the oxygen because of the pigment hemoglobin. Then another component of the blood, we call it as WBC. So what is the expansion of WBC? So W refers for white, B refers for blood, C refers for cells. So totally white blood cells or WBC. So what is the role of these WBC cells? Dear children, so each and every body or human body or consisting of has its own immunity power. This immunity power will be helps to fight against the disease causing agents. Right now, so this immunity power that is provided by the WBC only, that is white blood cells. So white blood cells kills the harmful microbes and disease causing agents and protects our body. Then the another component of the blood is platelets. See children, these platelets helps in clotting of blood and prevents the loss of blood. So it will be act as a preservative method of bloods. So which means when we will be get an injury, so at within a few minutes or fraction of seconds, the blood will be starts clotting. ರಕ್ತ ಹೆಪ್ಪುಗಟ್ಟುವಿಕೆ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. So this we call it as clotting. This clotting will be held because of platelets. Dear children, these are the major components of blood. So that is plasma, red blood cells, white blood cells and platelets. Plasma helps to transport food, water, carbon dioxide and other nitrogenous waste substances. Red blood cells will be helps to transport the oxygen, and in that red blood cells there is a pigment that is present, we call it as hemoglobin. This hemoglobin only responsible for transportation of oxygen. Then white blood cells or WBC helps to kill the harmful microbes or disease causing microbes and it will be helps to protect our body. Then platelets will be helpful for clotting of blood and prevents the loss of blood during the time of injury. So this is about the major components of blood. Then we will be move on to the another type of component of circulatory system, that is arteries. So these arteries carries the pure blood from the heart to all the parts of the body, and they having thick walled and they do not have valves. Dear children, these arteries is in a very strong and thick walled muscles and cells. Why? Because the heart will be pumps the oxygenated blood to each and every part of our body by the help of arteries only. So when the heart will be pumps the blood, it will be comes out from the heart in a high pressure, because the heart has to pump the oxygenated blood to all the parts of the body from upper part and as well as lower part of our body. Right now students, that's why arteries will be made the thick walled cells and they do not have a valves. So why this the arteries will be do not have a valves, later we will be discuss that. So next, veins. So these veins will be carry the impure blood from all the parts of the body to the heart. These veins will be carries the impure blood, that is nothing but the carbon dioxide and other toxic substances mixed blood from all the parts of the body to heart. And then these veins having valves and the thin walled cells arrangements that we are going to identify in the veins. Next is capillaries. So capillaries are narrow blood vessels which connects the arteries and veins together, and in that capillaries only the process of exchange of food, water, oxygen, carbon dioxide, etc. will be takes place between the blood and cells by the help of capillaries only. So dear children, these are the major components of circulatory system. So which are the major components of circulatory system? Blood, arteries, veins, capillaries and heart. This heart will be helps to pump the oxygenated blood to all the parts of the body, and then whatever they will be receives the carbon dioxide rich amount of blood to the lungs for the purification purpose. So here in the human body, the process of circulation that will be takes place in a two types, that is we call it as double circulation. So later we will be discuss the double circulation process. So heart is a muscular organ which pumps the blood to all the parts of the body. So already we know that the heart will be having four chambers. Four chambers the heart has in a human beings, and remaining other organisms like reptiles, aves, these are all the organisms. They will be having different chambers. The upper chambers are called as atrium or atria, and lower chambers are called as ventricles. So, whatever the atrias are there, they will be receives the oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood from all the parts of the body. For example, the left atrium that will be receives the oxygenated blood from lungs to heart. At the same time, the right atrium that will be receives the carbon dioxide rich blood from all the parts of the body to heart. And that the below two regions, that is we call it as ventricles. These ventricles helps to, for example, left ventricle helps to transport the oxygenated blood to all the parts of our body. At the same time, the right ventricle will be helps to transport the deoxygenated blood to lungs for the process of purifications. So in between these valves, that is left atrium and ventricles, there is a one separate wall is present. This wall will be very helpful to avoid the mixation of deoxygenated blood and oxygenated blood. This wall we call it as septum. This septum only will be responsible for separation of left and right chambers. So left, most probably the left chamber, when we are going to divide the heart into two parts, when we are going to divide the two parts of heart chamber, so the left part that will be carries oxygen, so right side of the will be carries deoxygenated blood to from various kinds of body parts to heart, and then the heart will be pumped to the heart deoxygenated blood for the towards the lungs for the purification process. So in between that, it will there is a special wall that will be called it as septum. This septum will be prevents the mixing of deoxygenated blood and oxygenated blood in the heart. So when the contraction and relaxation that will be takes place in a human heart, the process of transportation will be continuous. So this is about the brief information about the components of transportation system. So let us discuss how the process of transportation will be takes place and working how the working of heart will be takes place in the systematically. So related to this, I'm going to share that attached video related to the circulatory system. Must be watch this and understand the concept.
I have. Hello, everyone. It is always great to start with an amazing fact and learn something new. So, today I have brought some facts for you. Do you know that the heart
ನಮಸ್ತೆ ಸರ್ ಹೇಳಿ.
can perform its function outside the body also? How it is possible? As long as it. Hello, everyone. It is always great to start with an amazing fact and learn something new. So, today I have brought some facts for you. Do you know that the heart can perform its function outside the body also? How it is possible? As long as it receives oxygen, it will keep going, even if it is outside the body or well separated from the rest of the body. Also, the heart can generate its own electrical impulses, which causes it to beat. Now, the heart is a muscular organ. It is as big as a fist. It beats 72 times per minute. The bigger bodies have slower heart rates. Strange but true. So, the human body needs a lot of amount of energy to perform its task efficiently. So, there is a need to ensure that the oxygenated blood and the deoxygenated blood are well separated. Because of that, the humans have four chambered hearts. The four chambers are right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, and left ventricles. So, we have seen the four chambers. Now, the heart relaxes and contracts to receive in and pump out the blood respectively. Now, the atriums are responsible for receiving the blood, whereas the ventricles are responsible for pumping out the blood. Now, the right atrium is receiving the deoxygenated blood from the body, whereas the left atrium receives the oxygenated blood from the lungs. The right ventricle is responsible for pumping out the deoxygenated blood to the lungs, whereas the left ventricle is responsible for pumping out the oxygenated blood to the whole body. So we have seen the functions of each chamber. So let's connect these pieces and see exactly how the heart works. Now, first the deoxygenated blood enters into the right atrium through upper and lower vena cavas. Now, these blood enter when the right atrium is relaxed. Now, when the right atrium contracts, it transfers the deoxygenated blood to the right ventricle. At that time, the right ventricle is relaxed. Now, when the right ventricle contracts, it pumps out the deoxygenated blood through the pulmonary arteries to the lungs. In the lungs, the deoxygenated blood gets converted into oxygenated blood. Now, this oxygen rich blood enters through pulmonary veins to the left atrium. At that time, the left atrium is relaxed. Now, the blood, oxygen rich blood, has reached to the left atrium. Now, the left atrium contracts and the left ventricle is relaxed. So, the blood is transferred into the left ventricle. Now, the oxygen rich blood is in left ventricle. Now, the left ventricle contracts and pumps out the oxygen rich blood through the aorta to all part of the body. So, we have seen how the heart functions. Now, you have observed that the blood has entered into the heart two times. First, in the deoxygenated form, and second, in the oxygenated form. So, we can say that the blood is circulated two times. So, the humans, like other vertebrates, have double circulatory system. You must have also observed that the atrium walls are thinner in comparison to the ventricles. This is because the arteries have to transfer the blood to the nearby chambers only, but the ventricles have to transfer the blood to the different parts of the body. So you can conclude that the arteries have thin walls, whereas the ventricles have thick walls. You have also seen that the deoxygenated blood is blue color, but the blood is not blue. Now, there are walls that ensure that the blood do not backflow when the atrium or the ventricles contract. Now, you must have seen in the diagram that the deoxygenated blood is depicted blue. You must have also seen that the veins in our hands or in our legs appear to be a bit bluish. The blood becomes dark in color because of the presence of carbon dioxide, but it is not in blue color. So we have seen the functioning of heart and the different chambers involved in the working. So now let's have a look on the heart of other animals. We have seen in the earlier videos that the higher energy demand leads to the chamber separations. So higher the energy demands, more is the number of chambers. Such as birds and mammals. They are having more chambers because they need energy to maintain their body temperature. But there are also some animals which do not need these chambers because they can bear the mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood, like reptiles and amphibians. They maintain their temperature according to the environment. There are also fishes which have only two chambers. That is, when the blood enters, it directly goes into the gills from where it gets oxygenated and get transferred to the body. So we can say that the blood goes only once through the whole body of the fish. So we have seen the different heart or the circulatory system of the animals and the human beings. So let's see the various tubes and vessels which are involved in the functioning of the circulatory system. Now mainly there are two vessels or two tubes which we say arteries and veins. Let's understand them by drawing a difference table between them. Now here we have arteries and veins. Now the arteries have the function of carrying the oxygenated blood from the heart to the different parts of the body, whereas the veins carry the deoxygenated blood from whole part of the body to the heart. Now, since the arteries are receiving the blood from the heart, it is under high pressure. But in veins, since it is collecting the whole blood from the body and then giving it to the heart, it is under low pressure. Now, the arteries do not have walls because it has to transfer its blood from the heart to the different parts of the body. But the veins have walls to prevent the backflow because it is carrying the blood from whole parts of the body to the heart. Now, the arteries have thick elastic muscular walls because the blood flowing in arteries is under high pressure. Whereas in veins, it has non-elastic muscles because the blood is not flowing under so much pressure. At last, we see that pulmonary artery is the only artery which carry the deoxygenated blood, whereas the pulmonary vein is the only vein which carry the oxygenated blood, which we have seen in the functioning of heart. So we have seen the difference.
As children, so in a human beings, how the transportation will be takes place. So I hope you understand these concepts by using or by watching the video related to the human circulatory system. So after that, some other animals also we are going to discuss here. How does the process of heart or transportation that will be takes place in mammals, birds, amphibians, reptiles and fishes and as well as in plants. See children, in human beings, already we know that the process of transportation that will be takes place by the help of heart, and that heart will be having the four chambers, that is the two auricles and two ventricles. These auricles and ventricles will be separated by the help of septum. The left ventricle will be carries the pumps the deoxygenated blood from all the parts of the body. Then the right ventricle that will be helps to transport the deoxygenated blood towards the lungs for the further purification process. So these are the concepts we are discussed in a previous link, which means in the previous attached video. Same like that only in the mammals also and birds also having the fourth chamber, that is the right and left side of a heart is separated by the septum. This also will be helps to prevent the oxygenated blood, avoid the mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood, and provides efficient supply of oxygen. That's why only in the mammals and birds it will be requires the necessary to separate the both the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood, because in the mammals and aves various metabolic activities that will be takes place, and as well as to maintain the sufficient amount of body temperature, and the mammals and the birds having the complex body design. So because of these reasons only, these mammals and birds requires more amount of energy or more amount of energy to maintain sufficient body temperature and maintain various metabolic activities inside the body. That's why only these mammals and birds requires more amount of oxygen, as because of that only it is necessary to separate deoxygenated blood and oxygenated blood in mammals and birds. So like same kind only in the amphibians and reptiles. So most probably in the amphibians and reptiles they were having three chambers heart. So and here allows some mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood will be takes place in this amphibians and reptiles, because They do not use energy to maintain their body temperature because it is most probably these amphibians and reptiles are cold blood animals, but mammals and birds are warm blood animals. Okay, so that's why only the amphibians will be having the three chambered heart, and in that only there is a mixing of carbon dioxide will be takes place in both the amphibians and reptiles. So because of this nature, because this will be takes place, uh, why? Because they are cold blood animals and they are not well developed as compared to mammals and birds. That's why only the amphibians and reptiles will be having three chambered. So then here if you come to the fishes, they have only two chambers, and blood is oxygenation will be takes place by the help of gills only. The process of exchange of gases and transportation of oxygen will be takes place by the help of gills only. So even the heart of fish having only two chambers, and the blood is oxygenated in gills. This is about the complete information of other animals. How does this process of circulation will be takes place? Yes, children. So next we are move on to the how the transportation process will be takes place in plants. So in plants, the process of transportation of materials like food, water, and minerals that will be takes place by the help of the two different tissues. That is, we call it as xylem and phloem. Children, this transportation of water and minerals from the roots to all the parts of the plant that by the help of the xylem only. Hence, the xylem tissue is also called as water conducting tissue. So, in the process of the transportation of minerals and water, that will be transportation will be takes place by the help of transpiration pull. Transpiration pull. Understand? So here that will be the process of transpiration or the process of transportation of water will be takes place because of the rate of evaporation. So the rate of evaporation will be varies the process of absorption of water. If the rate of evaporation is more in a plant, the rate of absorption of water is also more. So this rate of evaporation will be takes place because of the stomata that is present in the leaf. When the stomata will be opens at the during the daytime, the water will be comes out from the plant body because of heavy temperature of sunlight. So this will be increase the turgor pressure or sucking pressure in the roots of the plant. This will be helps to suck the more amount of water, or it will be helps to absorb the more amount of water from the land. So that's why this we call it as transpiration. So the process of removal of waste water or excess water in the form of water vapors, that is what we call it as transpiration. So this transpiration will be helps to upward movement of water and minerals in the plant's body. So one more thing, that is we call it as phloem. The phloem will be helps to transport the food particles from leaf to all the parts of the plant body. This process we call it as translocation. So what is the difference between transpiration and translocation? Children, understand this. Transpiration is nothing but the process of removal of waste materials or water body, what waste excess water in the form of water vapors. This is we call it as transpiration. So translocation means the process of transport of food from leaf to other parts of the plant. This process what we call it as translocation. See children, in the xylem, the movement of water molecules will be takes place in unidirectional, which means only upward direction only that will be takes place. Single direction only. Unidirection is nothing but the single direction. But in the phloem, we are going to identify both the directions, upward and as well as downwards, the process of transportation of food particles will be takes place from leaf to all the parts of the plant body, like tip of the plant body and as well as root tip of the plant body. The process of transportation of food particles will be takes place by the help of the phloem. That's why only the phloem is also called as food conducting tissue. And one more thing, dear children, in the xylem, the water and minerals that is transported because of the transpiration. If the rate of transpiration is more, the process of absorption of water molecules is also more in the xylem. But one thing, in the phloem, the food is transferred to all the parts of the body. For that purpose, the phloem requires energy, that is in the form of ATP. So this is about the complete information about how does the process of transportation that will be held in plants. I hope you understand. These are all the videos, children.